question is that the motion be agreed to.
E te mana whakawa.
Paul Foster-Bell.
Tēnā koe e te mana whakawa. Sir, it actually makes my stomach turn to hear a speech which, dressed up in language about protecting New Zealand home buyers, at the heart of it is simply round two of the Labour Party's attack on people with Chinese-sounding surnames. We're a country which for a long time has welcomed people from overseas. For a long time, this country has welcomed our forebears, whether it be my forebears who came here on a waka 900 years ago, or whether it be those who came on a sailing ship from Scotland 100 years ago. We have been a country built up by the people who've come here, worked hard and contributed to our society, and that's why this bill is a revolting piece of dog whistle politics, once again from a member who one would have thought would know a little bit better than this. So this bill, sir, by amending the Overseas Investment Act 2005, applies a new level of restrictions on all non-resident purchases of New Zealand residential properties. And it does beg the question whether this will also apply to non-resident New Zealanders who've chosen to go offshore, because we know a significant proportion of the 3% nationwide or 4% in Auckland of non-New Zealand tax resident purchases of property are actually New Zealanders who are working overseas, perhaps in Australia, perhaps in the UK, perhaps in Asia. There's a growing class of New Zealand entrepreneurs and business people who are choosing to go to China and do business in that burgeoning developing market for us. Will these measures apply to New Zealand citizens who, for reasons of business or marriage perhaps, are choosing to go and live offshore? Under the provisions of this bill, non-residents will only be granted permission to purchase a residential property if they intend to live here permanently or if they're going to add to the housing stock. Sir, this is based on absolutely shonky data. The motivation for this bill, frankly, sir, I find it terrifying that the main opposition party, the largest at least opposition party in the New Zealand Parliament, although we've learned in recent weeks it's not necessarily the largest opposition party by party membership, but it is terrifying that the alternative government of New Zealand is suggesting, I think, such a retrograde and dog-whistling measure. So even if you were a student coming to New Zealand here on a student visa, you would be required to sell your house within 12 months if you were going to leave New Zealand, perhaps to do a postdoctoral qualification after having graduated here with a PhD or a valuable postgraduate qualification. We know for people studying at that level, it's actually very usual, normal practice to go and do a period of time, perhaps at an overseas university to do a postdoc, maybe at a research laboratory. And these people will often come back to New Zealand and make a huge contribution, and we can look at a number of the great achievers, the people who have made significant scientific advances, and I look to someone like Dr. Sweet Tan, who has contributed enormously to the alleviation of strawberry birthmarks among young New Zealand, infants, toddlers who suffered from that debilitating and disfiguring condition, and has contributed hugely to the research that's allowed those young people to be cured of that condition without the hugely traumatic intervention of surgery, which was previously the case. And so someone like Dr. Sweet Tan is, for me, an example of a very fine New Zealander, someone makes a huge contribution, but is the sort of talented person who, after having perhaps completed postgraduate study here in New Zealand, might rightly and properly go overseas to do work in a laboratory and will hopefully return to New Zealand. We want to make it as easy as possible for those sorts of people to come back to New Zealand, not to place barriers in the way as this bill would do. There's absolutely no need for this bill given the statistics, and the shonky statistics, Mr. Speaker, come from the Labour Party, not the neutral figures that were published by our neutral public servants from Land Information, not at all manipulated, as the member claims. What I would say is manipulated is his statistic of 15,000 ghost houses. One can only presume Mr. Twyford's 15,000 ghost houses are a little bit like the missing million Labour Party voters who didn't show up at the last election. Completely fictional. So I think, Mr. Bill, this is an absolutely hopeless bill, but this shows the xenophobic underbelly of the modern Labour Party. It would actually disgust previous fine Labour Party ministers and Prime Ministers. The founding fathers of the Labour Party would no doubt be turning in their grave at this sort of measure. It's revolting and I'll be voting against it.
Grant.